what Dad didn't say, he didn't say listen to the captain or listen to the admirals. He said listen to the senior enlisted person, the chief, because they have all the wisdom, right? And they'll take care of you. And then he said take care of the junior enlisted, take care of the sailors. Because if you do that, you listen to the person with wisdom and take care of the person who's the junior person.
Hey, welcome to the Leadership Loading Podcast. I'm Jason McClaren.
Hey, and I'm Mark Fava.
Hey, Mark, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Mark is a retired Navy captain and author, so that's why we have him on the show today, but we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But Mark, tell us how you joined the military. What led you to join the military?
Yeah, look, Dad was in the Navy. So I grew up, Dad was in the Navy. By the time I went to college, I had a sibling a year ahead of me and one a year behind me. And Dad said, if you want to go out of state to school, you got to get a scholarship. So I started looking around, and the best scholarship I could find was the Navy ROTC scholarship. And I said, what the heck, I'll go do it. So I went to University of North Carolina on an ROTC scholarship.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been a trend on the podcast lately is people getting ROTC scholarships. So I think that's interesting. I did JROTC. I did Army first, then I went Navy or JROTC, and I was planning on doing that and going into the military, hopefully on a scholarship. That didn't work out. I moved to my last high school didn't have ROTC or JROTC, so kind of had to reboot and do all that. But so I didn't get that benefit. So you went on a ROTC scholarship, and then of course that commissioned you as a ensign.
That's correct. It's wonderful program. You do the summer training every summer, and then the day after you graduate, you get commissioned and off you go. And for me, I went to Pensacola to be a naval flight officer in P3s and had a 6-year initial commitment. And then after that, went back to law school, but ended up staying in the reserves for 24 years and completing 30 years. So it was a wonderful, wonderful journey.
Yeah, I forgot you're a lawyer. So how was all that?
It's good. I combined my passion with planes and aviation with law. So a lot of that came from the military. So my ground job in the first squadron I had was, you go during the day and you fly around in a P3 and you look for Soviet submarines. And then when you're on the ground, I got assigned to be a legal officer for the squadron. So, do all the non-judicial punishment, help the CO. Really enjoyed it and decided that's the passion I wanted to pursue. But there was so much in the military I liked. I wanted to stay in the reserve. So I never converted to a JAG, but just stayed flying the whole time.
That's pretty neat. I didn't realize you were both separate, a lawyer and a flyer. So that's cool. So, what are you doing now that you've separated or retired, I guess?
Yeah, I started while I was still a reservist. So I went back to law school, and then I started working at a small firm. Right around fall of 2001, I had a good friend of mine, also a buddy of mine, Navy buddy, called me up and said, why don't you come work for Delta Airlines? And, that was a dream come true for me. So I went to work for Delta in Atlanta for 3 years. The irony was it was 41 days before 9/11. So my world changed very quickly in 41 days, but came back to Charleston, started a big aviation law practice, and then was very fortunate about 14 years ago when the world's largest aerospace manufacturer moved into my hometown. And that's where I've been for the past 14 years.
And so you're doing that. Are you doing legal stuff for them, or are you doing flying stuff?
Legal. Yeah. Legal stuff and safety stuff. So it's been a great transition. And there's just a ton of, we all have, sort of like in the military, we have ID cards. We all have badges that get us into the property. And we have a heavily populated veteran population there. And many of us wear veterans lanyards. So it's a really comfortable place to be.
Yeah. I know when I was at Lackland, which is now Joint Base San Antonio, we had, when they did the whole merger, that the one side of the runway became Boeing's.
Yep.
I don't know. They test C5s there. I know that. But of course we had to be trained on that because I was a firefighter. So we did all the response for emergencies for them. But yeah, it was kind of not awkward, but unique being on a, half civilian base and half military. So I can imagine it's similar there that you guys are working with the civilians and your counterparts there.
Yeah. Charleston is really neat because Charleston is the same way, Jason. We've got, on the other side, we've got Charleston Air Force Base with all the C-17s. Then we have the Charleston Commercial Airport. And then right to the side of that, we have the manufacturing facility. So all of them are using the joint base field.
So obviously throughout all this, you've probably led teams. What's some of the sizes of your teams you've led throughout your career?
Yeah, I think like most folks in the military, I started with a fairly small team, small divisions, small branches in Navy squadrons, and I was very fortunate then to become department head in the reserve. So then you're looking at a larger group, and the epitome of that came in 2004 when I was selected to be the commanding officer of a P3 squadron in Jacksonville. So that was, that's about 300 people. Half of them are full time reservists, the other half are reservists like me that come and go, and we had probably 8 or 9 P3s that were still, doing duty around the world. So that was probably the largest group and the most fun and the most dynamic.
So the P3s, were they on ships like aircraft carriers or?
No, it's all land based. So it's the large Lockheed Electra, 3 propellers. The stinger off the back for the mad boom. And the irony is, I'm in the back, so I'm not actually the pilot, but I start as a navigator, the naval flight officer, move over to be the tactics officer and the mission commander, and it's almost all open water search and aviation, anti-submarine warfare related missions.
Good deal. So that's a lot going on there. Yeah, I know when I was in the military, I joined the Air Force, like I said earlier, and enlisted, you kind of start off, you're the front line, pretty much never have anybody under you. And then right before I got out, I was running, small teams, 5, 6 people at a time, I guess you call that a squad in the Army or whatever. But my duties were station captain, so I had my team just for that one fire station. So
Sure.
Pretty interesting there. But yeah, like you mentioned running the P3s, as military people, we get to run different pieces of equipment. And I think some of that stuff can be millions of dollars. So how did that help you, get to where you are today, running large pieces of equipment or, being over things that are that valuable. And of course, the people that also.
Yeah, I think that the 2 biggest takeaways would be what you just mentioned. So definitely the teamwork and the people. So the P3, a crew of 12, sometimes 13 people, 3 pilots, 2 naval flight officers like myself, and the rest are, highly technical and experienced enlisted operators who are in the aircraft. So for the mission to be effective, we had to work together as a team, and we went all over the world by ourselves to do that. And then secondarily, just recognizing the responsibility granted to us and the decision matrix you have, we would always think about the risk cube. Is this something we should be doing? Can we go do this? Because you are dealing with a multi-million-dollar aircraft and an incredibly important mission, and you know how that goes, right? There's the urge to go get the mission done, but at the same time, you got to be balancing the other interests that are likely going to happen or could possibly occur on the mission.
Yeah, I know. I just remember being over my first fire station. I had 3 fire trucks there, and each one's, a couple $1 million a piece. Of course, the Air Force, everything's custom ordered. So yeah, I think back when I was in the military and I was running fire stations, we had like 3 apparatus there that are all custom ordered. Could be a couple $1 million a piece, but I mean, I may have been 23 at the time. In charge of these 3 pieces of apparatus and 2 guys on each one, 2 to 4 guys on each one. And I'm running all that with, 5 years of training. Like you said, it all comes down to your decision-making matrix and what you're doing. Of course, we did aircraft rescue and high-angle rescue. And there were times that, we're doing things that we probably shouldn't have been, like practicing our high-angle rescue, out there. But that's just what, we were trained to do. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that leads me to your book. So like I said, you're an author. Tell us about the book. What's the name of it, and what led you to write it?
Yeah, the book goes back to my military days. So after I was in the squadron for 3 years, I spent my last job as an admiral's aide, and you know how that job is. You're doing everything every day for a flag officer, and everything has to be perfect. There's not a whole lot of room for mistakes or errors. But what I realized is a lot of the habits that I learned in the military, the same ones that you and I learned, were the ones that carried me through not only law school, but also made me a good leader later on as a commanding officer of a squadron. And I went on to command 2 other units. So the book is called Lessons from the Admiral, Naval Wisdom and Sea Stories for Leaders. And really, it's just a group of stories that all have a lesson that I realized I had taken from that job and continued to use over 30 years. And my goal in writing the book was to sort of pay it forward and share those lessons with other people, so they could benefit from them, not only my successes, but also my mistakes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think people could do that with fire chiefs too. Coming from my firefighter background, you could get a lot of stories from the fire chiefs, especially the older ones that are been in for a while, and have some stories from the olden days of when we did the crazy firefighting. yeah, that's interesting. So, how long, walk us through the process. I know a lot of listeners may want to write a book. So how long should they plan, and kind of what's the role and how they get started on it?
Yeah. I tell you, there's 3 different ways to do it. You can self-publish. That's number 1. Number 2, you can have a hybrid publisher, and that's the route I took. And the third is the traditional publisher. Traditional publisher is very, very difficult, right? You've got to have a manuscript. You've got to have an agent. It's like getting selected for the NFL. So I realized I didn't have the time to do that, and probably wasn't good enough to do that for my first book. And then the challenge with self-publishing, same thing. It would just be very difficult. I knew I could probably do it, but having the time to do it might be challenging. And I wanted a product that looked professional. So I went with a hybrid publisher. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's a pay-to-play publisher, so I'm paying the publisher to produce my book, but hopefully the return will be on the back end. And for me, that process took about 2 years from start to finish.
Yeah, and I think you said pay-to-play, but everything costs something to do, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know once if you're writing multi-million-dollar books, then yeah, they're going to give you some money on the front end, but those people have, probably, paid in the beginning, and they have staff and that sort of thing they have to do. But that's like any kind of business or any kind of thing you're doing. What do they say? Spend money, make money.
Yeah. It's all investment, right?
Yeah.
And what I've heard repeatedly, and it's something that I've grown to understand later in life, is if you're going to invest in anything, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself, right? Because you're pretty sure you might not know what that return will be, but you know how hard you're going to work to make a return. So technically, if I break even on the book and the book allows me to do other things when I ultimately retire from my full-time job, that would be absolutely wonderful. But it was a lifetime dream and something I finally decided to get it done.
Good deal. All right. Well, Mark, if you had one tip for a new leader, new naval aviator or new guy that wants to go in the military, what would it be?
Yeah, I think you'll like this one, Jason. So we talked about earlier at the beginning of how I was commissioned. Dad was a Navy captain at the time. He's the one that commissioned me, with Mom standing right next to him. I'm at the University of North Carolina at the old well, which is the historic place on campus. And he told me, he said, son, listen to your chiefs and take care of your sailors, and you'll do okay. And what Dad didn't say, he didn't say listen to the captain or listen to the admirals. He said listen to the senior enlisted person, the chief, because they have all the wisdom, right? And they'll take care of you. And then he said, take care of the junior enlisted, take care of the sailors. Because if you do that, you listen to the person with wisdom and take care of the person who's the junior person, boy, the camaraderie and the morale will be phenomenal, and they'll pull for you and do just about anything for you. And I got to be honest with you, my success in a squadron, both as a lieutenant commander, and ultimately as the captain, was following that bit of advice.
Yeah, that's similar to something I did when I was a leader also, is, taking care of my one downs, my direct reports. And of course, They fed that down to the front line, and, it worked really well, especially when I was over teams of like 40 people, because I can't touch all of them every day. But I try to get out there, at least once a week or every couple of weeks, and, shake hands and, see what's going on in the front lines and do that. But also there's like an old meme joke that, in the military, the commander tells the first sergeant, hey, have the guys there at 7:00 in the morning. Well, then the first sergeant tells the squad leader, have them there at 6:00 in the morning. And then the squad leader tells the guys on the line, we'd be there at 5:00 in the morning, which that's why you get there and you're sitting there for 3 hours waiting for the commander to show up, because they're all trying to.
Right. Absolutely. I talk about that in the book. We used to call it in the Navy milling about smartly. You're just there, you just wait, and everybody knows. By then, if the leader is late, everybody knows it. So you better be on time if you're the one they're waiting for.
Yeah, especially if you're in your full dress uniform, because something bad probably happened.
Absolutely. How many times have we been standing in the ranks at parade rest, just praying that person will show up and they're late? Not a good thing.
Good deal. Well, Mark, if anybody wanted to reach out to you, how could they do it?
Yeah, just go to the website, markcfava.com. And it's got all the information about my book, my contact information, and would love to hear from you, especially any veterans that are listening.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes below so everybody can just click on it if you're watching this on YouTube or on the podcast, or you can just type it in your phone. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great, Jason. Thank you for having me.
There are thousands of leadership and management podcasts to choose from. We're glad you chose the Leadership Loading podcast, a Go Heroes production. If you'd like to support Go Heroes Inc., visit www.goheroes.org. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Let's all grow together. Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. Leadership Inspired.